You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for the fourth episode of Skeleton Crew Can't Say I Remember No at Attin. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, child soldier, Joe Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready for a lifetime of not dealing with trauma. Let's do it.
We're all on the same timeline now.
Yeah.
This is the day after the episode aired. We are not in advance of you guys anymore. We are watching as you guys are watching, which means that we have episode titles for better or worse. I don't know how I feel about these episode titles. It's a little silly. That they're just like basically all quotes from within the episode, but I guess that's one way to do it. I it's just you and I. Kyle is otherwise detained. I don't know. He's got other stuff to do. He's got more important things to do. Yeah, we are useless individuals, and therefore have all of the free time in the world because we're just artists, right? So
yeah, but you're a parent.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Yeah, that's fair. So I'm more useful than you are.
You are.
At
You
least
contribute
in that respect.
more to society and to the human race as a whole than I have.
I suppose so. That's some real breeder mentality you got going on there, Joe.
Well, I mean, good luck with what they're gonna have to deal with in their lifetime. But you know,
yeah. We don't need to talk about that. Let's talk about a different dystopian future in the past. Let's talk about this episode of Skeleton Crew. Man. Okay, so at the end of the last episode, they were like blasting off, right? We were leaving the pirate the pirate thing and going to the moon, and then Kim was like, I got the thing and go to this place. Here's the coordinates. And they did. We're like, it can't be they can't just be getting back to Attin like that. That's too easy. That's too simple. So obviously they didn't. They ended up on one of these other jewel planets, the jewels of the Old Republic, I think is what they were called, at Akron as opposed to at Attin, and yeah, it's not very nice here. I thought that we might be getting time travel stuff at first. I was like,
oh really?
Yeah, I thought that maybe Attin was in like some sort of like a time bubble or something like that. And once they left the barrier, that going back, it's like it's been 100 years or something, and they need to like figure it out. But like how to get back, but not quite that complicated. A little bit more simple. A lot of to do about these the citizens of Ad Akron and the fighting that's going on, but not really much in the way of detail. But like honestly, the episode is just kind of getting us to the point of them going into the tower, into the supervisor's tower, to actually further the plot. All that other stuff was like a Neil subplot, to show us the true value of Neil as a character, which I enjoyed, but it felt a little, I don't know, there was something that was just a little bit like it was a little bit shallow. It didn't quite get into it enough for me that I was like, yeah, this is like really really deep and meaningful. But
Are
I
you
got
are
like
you talking about the episode as a whole, or
I'm talking about like specifically the I don't what was the new character's name? Heina?
sure,
Like that
Heine?
the Heina with with Neil like that like and like the there was no real like I guess we're just supposed to go like, oh well, without the supervisor, they just devolved into tribal warfare,
Mm,
right? But then like there's a comment at one point about like, oh well, we only trade with off-worlders for like we trade our pelts for ammunition. And it's like, hold up. So you guys aren't trapped on this world. You're just choosing to stay here?
mm,
Like nothing's preventing you from leaving this planet. Why? Like why? So there was just a couple of things like that where I was like, I need a little bit, like I need a little bit more. Like there needs to be like, what are they fighting over, right? There needed to be a little bit more of an impetus for the conflict that was going on there, rather than just tribalism. Because that to me it just felt shallow. That's all it was. Like I didn't have any other problem with it. It just like that part of it was like it was like that's not this guys. This is not what the episode's about. Don't worry about it. And it's like, well, I kind of need in like if you're gonna make it part of like the mythology of this whole old republic, like High Republic, at Attin, at Akron, at whatever, right? Like all of these planets are connected. Then I need a little bit more and it needed to be. I think it needed to hint a little bit more at whatever the treasure is on at Attin, and give us just a taste more of what that is alluding to. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It was fine. It just was like, okay, I guess these guys are just fighting because they're fighting. Um, just felt like I said, it just felt shallow to me.
yeah.
Um, but the final scenes of the episode with SM33 up in the tower and everything like that was to me where the episode really really got interesting. I I and so yeah, like I don't know, I enjoyed it overall, but I would say I don't know weakest episodes so far of the show
Yeah,
for
I agree
sure.
with that. Yeah.
But I think that it's just the nature of where it is in the story. Like this is
Hmm.
kind of the beginning of depending on how you're looking at it. These 8 episodes, it's kind of if in a 5 act structure, this is sort of the beginning of the third act. So it like that makes sense. Like we are basically like in an information gathering
Hmm.
portion of it. Um, and I thought for a second maybe I was on track with that they're gonna need to go to oh god, what's the planet from Mando? The like home base where Mando and Grogu are now with Grief.
Oh God.
And I can't remember it off the top of my head right now, but you guys know what I'm
Navarro?
talking about. Sorry?
Navarro?
Yeah, Navarro, thank you.
Okay. Whew.
I should know that because I have one of the Disney mugs, like one or one of like
Cool.
the Starbucks mugs. I but that's for Navarro. It's like Mandalorian one. But yeah, I like so I thought yeah, I think I said that even on a previous episode, like, oh, you know what they need to do? They need to like I know where there are some droid smiths hanging out. And then it was like she was like, oh, I'm just gonna override or whatever. But then he goes haywire. So I I don't know. Maybe I'm back on that. Maybe that is what we're gonna get is them going to Navarro to the Droid Smiths, and we'll get a little bit of connection into Mando and maybe a final appearance of Grief Karga. Cause
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna be so weepy if that's the case.
Oh my god. Yeah, it
That's
yes,
gonna
but
kill me.
it would also be so great if we got just like one more appearance from him posthumously. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, I hope so.
I yeah, I don't know. Like I'm so intrigued by the direction of the series, that I think like the detour to hang out with these other people on at Akron was a little bit, you know what would have made it all worthwhile for me? One thing would have changed everything. If she would have gone with them when Neil was like, "Come with us," and like if she would have actually gone with them, like that would have made it all worth it to me. Like I would have been
Hmm.
like, "Okay, cool. Like we've picked up a new kid, right? Like we've added to the skeleton crew." But then she's like, "Oh, I got to stay here because one day I'll be in charge, and when I'm in charge, maybe I'll make everybody nice." And I'm like, that's also great. Like it's a great message, and I appreciate it. Like I like what they did with the story there, but I was just like, partway through the episode, I was like, oh, is she gonna go with that? Like she doesn't seem to like be meshing with the ideology here on her homeworld. Maybe she's gonna like join up and they're gonna become, part of the crew, and that's what some of the season's gonna be, is them sort of like gathering this crew. But no dice, no, not
Hmm.
as such. um but yeah, I don't know, I think I enjoyed the episode. Like I had a really good time with it. I love this series so much. um the girls are caught up. We all watched the episode together,
Oh, cool.
uh
Okay.
which was
W-
cool. But
Were they freaking out at the end when SM-33 like got really scary? Like, was that too intense?
no, no, no. Cassie was sitting with Crystal and was a little bit
Okay.
like, oh, like I don't, like this isn't happy sort of thing. but
Yeah. Yeah.
but she just watched it, right?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and Kara was definitely like reacting to it, but she was good. She was fine with it. So yeah, and that, like, they love it. They when I asked Kara, when I asked them both if they like the show, because I was like, oh, we're order a pizza and watch Star Wars, and Kara goes, you mean Skeleton Crew? And I was like, yeah, do you guys like it? And she was like, I love it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, so I think it is actually, like, at the moment, sort of her favorite piece of Star Wars.
That's cool.
um it's so helpful that it's a bunch of kids, right? And that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. For
like
sure.
I think Fern is definitely a character that she's identifying with, and she's sort of seeing herself in, and all of that sort of thing. So
It's
yeah.
funny that so many of these things are like going back to like kids as the protagonist. Like, I wish as a kid I had Ghostbusters Afterlife
Hmm.
and Skeleton Crew and Stranger Things, like, because when you're a kid, you're always looking up to like the adults, but I never felt like there were ever any shows where like I could see myself in. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
obviously I looked up to Luke and Han and, you know, the Ghostbusters and all that stuff, but like actually seeing kids do the things that like I wanted to do as a kid, like I would have been super jealous, but I probably would have loved these shows and films.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
I'm
think
jealous.
so.
I'm jealous they get to experience that. That's super cool.
Yeah, I think I mean, in the same way that I think when we watched, Goonies and Adventures in Babysitting was a big one for me as a kid. Like I loved that movie so much. Like, yeah, Home Alone, right? Like,
Oh, Home Alone is awesome.
right, like we all are putting ourselves in the shoes of
Mhm.
those protagonists and going like, yeah, man, if somebody tried to break into my house, I would hit them with paint cans and nails and in the floorboards and whatever. Yeah, like I think it's a very effective storytelling trope, right?
Mm.
To get the kids in there, and then if it's a good story, the adults will also be entertained. I said this in sort of our prelude to Skeleton Crew episode. In the director roundtable, one of the things that they had talked about was that, like, the thing about those movies, about like ET and Goonies and all of that Amblin stuff, was that they were not movies for kids. They were movies about kids, And I think that this show similarly is not a show for kids. It's a show about kids in Star
Mm.
Wars, which is not something that we've ever gotten to really experience, with the exception of like a couple of episodes of Clone Wars. And so I mean, I guess the Ewok adventure movies as well, right? Like those two films are definitely about, you know, Sindel and the Ewoks and whatever. Um, but and we learn through that sort of, it was not as clear in Return of the Jedi, but we sort of figure it out in the Ewok movies that Wicket is not an adult. Wicket is a child. Like he's a young Ewok. Um, so yeah, so I guess we have had this in Star Wars for quite a while, but it's nice to be returning to it, and it's nice for it
Mm.
to really be the focus. It's really interesting to me. We had a whole conversation yesterday about, and I've talked about this a million times on the podcast this year, that Lucasfilm and Disney are really focused right now on marketing the crap out of Darth Vader and Stormtroopers. Like that is all of the promotional tie-ins in 2024. Everything for this calendar year has been Imperial. It's all been classic trilogy, like OT stuff, Darth Vader, original plain white stormtroopers, um, and like the recent Columbia collab is in the past, because they've done a million collabs with Columbia at this point, like the jacket manufacturers, right? Like the outdoors gear manufacturer, right? Because they did like I think that they've done like Anakin and Obi-Wan twice. They did an Ahsoka one when that series was coming out. They did a whole Ahsoka line. But everything else that they've done has sort of been like oh, here's like multiple characters or multiple pieces sort of within the line, or even like some just generic Star Wars stuff. But this year it was very pointedly the entire thing, and there's like 12 pieces in this line. It's all Darth Vader. It's
Mm.
all just Darth Vader. And like there's no like light side versus dark side, which is usually the way that they go with this stuff. It's just Darth Vader. And then what's the, I can't remember, is like Moon Kitty or something like that, this nail polish brand that I've never heard of. They did a collab with that just released basically for Black Friday, and it's in a Darth Vader case, which is like, it's not like this stuff's not referring back to I like older Star Wars stuff, because the case that this nail polish, the box that this nail polish comes in, is meant to like evoke the Darth Vader action figure case, right? Like the old Kenner Darth Vader action figure case. Because there was like the C3PO head and there was the Darth Vader head, and I don't know if they did any other ones. I know of those two, but like that sort of thing, right? Um, but then like all of the nail polish colors, they're all dark side inspired, like the whole
Mm.
thing. And when we were in Disneyland back in August, there was a smattering of other stuff, but most of the merch that they had was dark side. Most of it like literally said dark side on it, like the dark side. Because Kara got a shirt that she really liked. It's like this white long sleeve t-shirt with the red lightsaber down one of the sleeves, and then like Darth Vader and Stormtrooper faces sort of on the front of it. And I almost like everything was dark side, dark side, dark side. So it's really interesting to me that Acolyte, I mean, earlier in the year, Bad Batch, and then Acolyte, and now Skeleton Crew are kind of the things that have come out this year. But it's very clear that like these decisions were made at different times, right? Like because production timelines being what they are, I Skeleton Crew what was filmed years ago, and has been sort of sitting on the back burner, and then like Acolyte, like similarly, production started on that forever ago, and it's like they got to release them. They have to put something on Disney Plus, and it's not going to line up with like their big marketing pushes for the year and all of these like integrations and partnerships that they've made. But everything else is just, every time I walk into a store, I haven't bought a Star Wars t-shirt this year. I've been looking for new Star Wars t-shirts because a lot of mine have sort of um basically everything that I had is from Celebration in 2022. So it's all kind of starting to get a little bit threadbare and that sort of thing. So I've been looking for new Star Wars merch for new shirts and stuff. I thought I was going to get a bunch at Disneyland, but then it turned out that there really wasn't much to choose from. And like Hot Topic, Old Navy, Gap, wherever. Actually, Gap has a Bad Batch shirt right now, but the design is on the back of the shirt, not on the front of the shirt. So I'm like, well, I'm not paying $40 for a T-shirt that is going to be covered by like a design that's going to be covered by the hoodie or
Yeah.
flannel or whatever that I'm wearing, because yeah, like nobody's going to see the back of my T-shirt. Um, but everything else is just dark side. Like not even generic Star Wars right now. Not even just like here's the logo. Everything is Darth Vader, stormtroopers. It's kind of driving me nuts because I don't want to buy Darth Vader and stormtrooper stuff. I don't want to wear that. Um, but here's Skeleton Crew, and it like kind of flies in the face of that marketing, because it's like this very, especially this episode, this is very like sweet saccharine, like I don't want to fight. Like I don't even want to practice fighting with Neil, right? Like he's such a, a sweet innocent character. And it's running so counter to the very concerted marketing effort to make people think that Star Wars is cool via the bad guys. Um, yeah, and that's all. I mean, I could go off into a whole thing as to why they're doing that, but that's not what Skeleton Crew is about, so I don't want to on this episode. We'll talk about it in the new year, but yeah, I'm sure that we'll have lots of reason to talk about it come the middle of January. I, but I would love some Skeleton Crew merch. I would love a T-shirt with Neil on it. Just I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like the Lucasfilm and Disney are once again letting us down with the merch for these shows. So I guess the fans are just gonna have to pick up that slack and just create stuff. Um, but man, what a missed opportunity. I don't know. I will once again put this out to you. Are you hearing a lot of people talking about this show, Joe?
Yeah, I think so. Like I feel like I'm seeing it pretty regularly on my feed. I am not seeing any of my many artist friends and people that I follow. Nobody's drawing Skeleton Crew. Nobody's
Yeah,
talking about creating art for Skeleton Crew or like, submitting to Acme or Lucasfilm any ideas.
yeah,
And I will also say this so the artists all show each other whenever we like submit for the Star Wars Celebration art show.
yeah,
We all show each other our concepts before actually submitting, and not one, not one. I mean, to be fair, they were due on Halloween,
yeah,
so
yeah.
the show
It's
wasn't
yeah.
out. Maybe we had like a handful of trailers, but like none of my artist friends are talking about it. But I am seeing a lot of fans talking about it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it's interesting because even compared to Acolyte, I felt like Acolyte had a lot more buzz, positive and negative. It's like Skeleton Crew. I feel like maybe this is just by virtue of the fact that I'm no longer on Twitter. Um, I'm not even seeing the vitriol. Like it's like I don't know. Like are the grifters even biting? Like it's interesting to me because usually what I see is not even so much that, but the reaction to it.
mhm.
And I'm not seeing any of that, which I know that like we were kind of bracing ourselves for like how awful are these guys going to be talking about these kids. Um, and then it feels like there's really not been much of anything from them.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I don't know what their flavor of the week is, but oh man, it actually is kind of weird because I'll say just across the board, like all of the griftery type things have gone kind of silent since the election.
Mm.
it's it's actually kind of, it's a little bit disconcerting for me, that like they won,
Yeah.
they got what they wanted, and now like there's no need. You see how much of an artifice it was.
Yeah.
Like you see
Yeah.
how much of a put on it was, that like they were riling people up in order to to build towards the election, and without these Republican mouthpieces telling them what to say about Star Wars, they've been kind of silent. Like
Yeah.
it's very interesting to me. It's very, very interesting to me to see these correlations, right? The other component is the way in which all of like the Russian disinformation stuff has sort of been like called out now, right? Like that's all out in the open, and like the FBI has like told everybody, hey, look, this is what they've been doing, um using all of these conservative talking heads to motivate people. And so like a lot of that chatter has kind of gone quiet, and along with it, the geek stuff has also kind of gone quiet. Like I really don't, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of like, oh, this is woke, it's sort of like rhetoric going on the internet right now. There's always like it's like the background noise in a science fiction show, right? Like there's always the steady hum of the ship in the background.
Mm.
So there's always going to be some, but there hasn't been, I feel like there haven't really been any like major inflection points recently. Um I of like, oh, like here's a pop culture thing that everybody is like jumping on to celebrate it, or crap on it and use it to
Mm.
further their hate agenda, right? Like it just, I don't know, it's weird, we were all bracing for Skeleton Crew, because like here's the show, like two of the leads are girls, and they're like literal girls, they're not women that are being called girls, but like they're actual children. And the expectation was that we would be just inundated with nonsense. The other component of this is that Wim is not a traditional male character, I don't think, and neither is Neil. Like they are both being young boys, being sort of like centered as quite soft. Um, and so yeah, like they're like, I really, really was expecting like that we were gonna get the show just like dragged into the mud, but it hasn't happened. I don't know. Maybe they're actually enjoying it. Are they actually enjoying it? I don't know. They can't be. There's no way, because they don't actually like Star Wars. None of these people actually like Star Wars, right? It sounds like I'm disappointed that they're not. I'm not. I'm just confused, I think, is what it is. But it might just be it might be the fact that they are kids, and like and at least some of these people have, I'm not going to say that they have like the moral fortitude or anything like that, because I don't think that it's a moral thing, but I think that they're actually like genuinely afraid to go after the kids, um I because they're worried about quote unquote cancel culture, right?
Mm.
That even if they like pander to their base once again, that in this instance people will be like, whoa, are you talking about these children? Are you talking about these 10 and 12-year olds? Like, is that who you're insulting right now? I that Even that is a bridge too far for these idiots. I don't. It's very interesting to me. It's from a sociological, anthropological perspective. It's like, huh, okay, so you guys won't go after this. Um, Even though I think that like the show, like this episode in particular, I think this is probably the reason why I'm kind of fixated on it right now, is like this episode was very like anti-war in the Star Wars, right? It was very like Neil's whole storyline was like, I don't want to fight. I don't think anybody should fight. Can't we just like, if I was in charge, I would just go say like, hey, can we just like be cool? And it's like, yeah, Neil, yes, agreed. I think that's how everybody in real life feels. But yeah, everybody wants their war in Star Wars, right? I don't know. So I really I was expecting, I don't know. I guess I'm just expecting backlash. I'm expecting it to go crazy, but maybe they're just all saving their energy for you know, the Ray movie so that they can really come out swinging
Yeah.
for that one. But part of me just thinks that like they're not being fed their talking points by Ben Shapiro and who's the other one? Is it Matt Walsh? Is the other one, right? Like
Sure.
because that's where it always comes from, right? It all like you trace it back to those things where it's like they did an episode of a thing and we're like, have you heard about this new Star Wars? And it's Star Wars has gone woke and they're putting a girl in the front uh, and she's black because white people aren't allowed in Star Wars anymore, right? Like, and you know, he does his little fake indignation thing, and then they all have their talking points and go record their YouTube videos and their TikToks about why Star Wars is ruining everything. Um, but they're not talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. Maybe
I'm
just
okay with it.
yeah. I am too. I like I said, I'm just confused. I think it's like it's the quiet has me on my back foot. Like what are they waiting for? Right, like where are they? They're hiding. I know that they're here somewhere. They haven't disappeared.
Mm.
um yeah, I don't know.
I gotta tell you, really, ever since Acolyte, and I know this is ridiculous considering we're on a podcast as I
Mhm.
say this, I am so burnt out by people's opinions on Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Acolyte was the straw that broke I mean, really, the wooden crate of straws that broke the camel's back.
Yeah,
But
sure.
like, I don't know, man. Ever since Acolyte, I'm just like, I don't care about anybody's opinion on Star Wars anymore. I just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think I'm right there with you. It's just, I, yeah, it is just like it's coming down to that confusion of like we really thought that they were just gonna go to town on this show,
Yeah.
and it's just been silence. So like, where is it? When's it coming? I don't know. It did Lucasfilm figure out like the formula for keeping these idiots silent, right? But part of me is like, that's impossible. That can't be it. That can't be it, right? Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe they just like Jude Law that much. I don't know. He does have a history of like misogyny and stuff. So maybe he's a
Oh no, really?
yeah, he cheated on somebody
Mm,
or I don't know. There was something. I don't remember what it was. It was a million years ago, and it was just one of
okay.
those like tabloid scandals, right?
Okay.
So and this was like, and it was, and it's so funny because so many of these things, it's like, well, if that happened before cancel culture was a thing, then we don't really count it. We only really count the cancel culture stuff after cancel culture became a thing. So it's like we're only mad about the stuff that's post cancel culture. Because like I don't know, did we talk? I don't remember where I was talking about this. The Harrison Ford thing, where it's like Carrie Fisher put I think I was talking to a friend in real life about this. So it's like Carrie Fisher put out the last book that she put out before she died, and it like detailed her affair with Harrison Ford
Oh
during
man.
Star Wars, which like he was married at the time, right?
Yeah.
And she was basically a child.
Yeah. She was what,
um
19,
yeah,
18?
and he was like 30. So it's like all the sort of stuff that like, let's transfer that onto who Hollywood wishes was Harrison Ford today, Chris Pratt, right? Chris Pratt does that stuff, and it would be all over everything, and people would be like, I'm never watching another Chris Pratt film ever again, and blah blah blah, right? Like it would be crazy. But like Harrison Ford did it, and we're all just like, yeah, it was the 70s, I guess. It's like, okay, all right. Um Which I think is fine. Like it's also like I don't think that Harrison Ford today would make the decisions that Harrison Ford made in 1976. And I bet if you talk to him, he would be like, "Yeah, I was an idiot." He would be the first person to be like, "That's not how anybody should conduct themselves." But I was stupid, and she was pretty. Uh, like I'm sure he'd have a lot to say about it. But it's funny to me that whole aspect of it, because like nobody is talking about that stuff with Jude Law when it was there was quite a bit of controversy around him, I remember, and people were like, "Oh, is he ever going to work in Hollywood again?" And it's like, yeah, he'll be fine. Not to mention the fact that he was in Harry Potter movies, and I think at least one of those movies released post the whole J.K. Rowling transphobe you know uh situation coming to light, right? So because he's Dumbledore in the Fantastic Beast movies, right? So
I forgot all about those films.
yeah, I mean
I
everybody did.
until you just mentioned them.
Yeah.
I did not remember they existed.
Good, let's go back to that. Don't watch them, they're awful. I mean, I haven't seen the second or third one. I only watched the first one. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And then it turned out that she was a transphobe, and it was like, okay, cool. So now I have a good reason not to see the next two. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. How did you feel about this episode? I've talked a lot, and you haven't even really said if
It's
you
all
enjoyed
right.
the episode or not.
I'm used to it. It was fine. I'm with you where it was the least exciting one. For me, it's my bottom one right now. I think it had a lot of great moments. Like, I mean, really everything with Neil. I agree for the most part that like
Yeah.
the stuff with Heine, I don't remember her name, was a little shallow. Sure.
Yeah. Heine. Yeah.
I did love though the kiss on the cheek and then front flipping away. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, it was so good.
Like what a kid thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, this will look really cool. I'm gonna do this as I leave. So I got a kick out of that. Yeah, everything with Neil in this episode was really great. They were the highlights for me this episode. Yeah, it was fine. It was okay. Like this was the kind of episode that I was anticipating before I saw any of the show. Like when I was watching the trailers, I was like, "Yep, this is gonna be kids on an adventure."
Yeah.
Sure, I'm in. I'll check it out. I'm not climbing the walls to see it, but I'm sure I will enjoy it. And that's kind of where this one landed for me. I'm not disappointed because you kind of touched on it before, where it's just one of those things where like the third, fourth episode in a lot of these shows, just like stuff kind of just stopped dead a little bit.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's a pacing thing, but yeah, it was fine. It was just there.
Yeah. It's a funny thing, because I think when we look back at the season, it won't be that big of a deal, but because we're releasing week to week,
Sure,
and I think especially for us, because we got the first three
yeah,
all at once.
Yeah,
And then
I watched the first three. You didn't. You waited a little bit. So I watched.
Well, I mean, I waited a day.
Okay,
to watch the third one.
So I watched all three of the first ones and was really hyped for this episode, and then waited 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it was.
Yeah.
For this one, and then it was this episode. I was like, all right, whatever.
Yeah. I think that that's a big. I think that that's a big component of sort of feeling a little bit like underwhelmed by the episode, because it's like, okay, that's all we're gonna get this week. Okay, that's fine. But it's necessary stuff. Like I think everything that happened in the episode was fairly important, in terms of sort of establishing. I think that the thing with the stuff with Neil is going to come back, and it's going to be even more important.
Let me know if you feel this way too. I
Yeah.
feel like there was a very deliberate scene that's going to pay off later, and it's the giant gun on the
Hmm.
building. Like,
Hmm.
clearly
Hmm.
they're gonna go to Attin or one of these other planets, and Neil will be like, "Oh, there's a gun on top of these buildings,"
Yeah.
and then that will be a thing. I feel like
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
kind of the only thing that was set up, other than the coordinates, obviously, to move along the plot. Um,
Yeah.
that was kind of the only thing that made my antennas go up this week about like, oh, this seems like this is important and is going to pay off later.
Oh yeah, I think you're on the money. I think like the manual
Canon,
like yeah,
whatever.
like the manual I sort of lever to because it's obvious that it's meant to be like an automated thing, right?
Mm.
But that like obviously it's everything's kind of dormant. I the I feel more confident than ever that the supervisor is not a real thing, right? That the supervisor is like a droid, a computer, or I actually saw somebody. I wish I remember who it was. Somebody on Blue Sky mentioned that they think that it's a holocron. Um,
Oh,
I
neat.
I think maybe it was Tim Owens, but somebody on Blue Sky was like, "Oh, I'm calling it right now. It's a holocron," which like I think would make sense as well. Um, I think that the supervisor is the big bad by the end of the season.
Yeah, that I definitely agree with.
And
Um,
I think like to your point of like, well, so like the gun on the top of the school, like this massive gun on the top of the school, I think that it will be aimed at the tower. Like I don't think that it'll be for like fighting off pirates. I think that it'll be like a the all of the security droids and the teacher droids and all of that are all gonna like they're basically gonna turn into like a battle droid army for
mm,
the supervisor. Because once the adults figure out that the supervisor is not real, everything's going to start to fall apart, right?
mm,
And that's going to kind of be like the big thing is it's like, oh, like we've been lied to this whole time. We're being subjugated. We're being used, and the republic doesn't even exist anymore. Like for a republic that died 50 years ago, um, yeah, I think that they're all going to be like what the hell, and there's going to be a revolt, and then the supervisor is going to be like, everybody go back to your homes now or else, sort of thing. And that the kids are going to be like, well, we can just blow it up. Like we know, I know where this gun is, we'll just blow up the tower, and save everybody. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the final episode. Is we got to get to the school, get on top of the school, and it'll be like the parents working with the kids to do this. Yeah, and the I think the pirate thing will have sort of been dealt with by then, but I don't know. The pirates all like absent this episode, right? Like no Captain Brutus at all in this episode.
yeah, yeah.
I but yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting. It's very there's so much mystery and intrigue in the series. Actually, a lot more than I thought there would be. And surprisingly for me, mystery and intrigue that works, right?
Mm,
Like stuff where I'm like genuinely don't really know where this is going, don't know what this is all driving towards. Really, really excited to see what's next. Whereas I think like with Acolyte, this didn't detract from the show for me at all. But the whole mystery of it, right? Like if you go back and you listen to us talking about it, the whole like, who is the apprentice, and who's the acolyte, who's the like
mm,
is what Darths are at play here, who's the Sith Lord. We got incredible payoff, obviously, with Plagueis in the final episode, but not important to me in the driving force of the series, right?
mm.
The thing that was important to me with that show was sort of the interpersonal stuff. And I'm enjoying the hell out of the interpersonal stuff on Skeleton Crew as well.
Yeah,
Like I love the dynamic with these kids. I'm
yeah. Their
really
chemistry
really
is good.
interested with Jude Law's character and whatever journey he's on. It pisses me off that a big part of it was off screen this week.
Yeah.
Because I feel like,
I can't put my finger on him yet. Like, I know
yeah,
we're not supposed to,
yeah, that's the point, right?
but like
But
it's like I'm invested in trying to put my finger on it. You know what I mean? It's not one of
yeah,
those things where it's like, ah, whatever. I like actively want to know what his deal is.
I mean, I'm fairly confident in my assertion from the last episode that he is he's a Padawan that escaped Order 66. And
Mhm.
I think like he's been living this pirate thing for so long that um he had kind of lost all of that, but being around these kids is bringing him back to his true character, right? Like
Mhm.
it's sort of bringing him back to the things that he learned when he was younger, and it's going to sort of be his connection back into like, oh yeah, okay, and like, and that he is a Jedi,
Mhm.
right? That even though he was like, I never technically said that, it's like, yeah, because you weren't ever like a knight, right? But but you're something. But there's also something with droids there, which is interesting because that's like a connection to Mando, right? Because Mando
Yeah.
also hates droids. But if you were a child or teenager during the Clone Wars, that would be a very understandable prejudice to have, right?
Mhm.
So I if they connect that, if that is somehow connected, that it's like the reason why he's like, don't, you can't trust a droid, like if you he says it in the third episode, the kids are like, oh, just get 33 up here to pilot the ship, and he's like, no, you guys got to figure this out, like if you let a droid do it, then you'll never learn anything for yourself, sort of thing,
Mhm.
which I think is like it's actually like an important lesson within Star Wars that I don't think we've ever heard before, right? Is that like, yeah, you got like, there are droids to do all of these things, but like, don't lose the skills just because a droid can do it for you, right? Um, I I which is to me like actually a very like Jedi ethos. That's actually
Mhm.
something that I would expect Obi-Wan to say, right? Because Obi-Wan kind of had a bit of an anti-droid sentiment at times. So
He also clearly just sliding in and hitting the off switch. He even says like always go for the off switch. Like
yeah,
he's clearly dealt with
there's
belligerent
experience there.
droids before,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's experience there. That was not a throwaway. Like that was an important piece of character that he, yeah, when you connect it to the other things that he said and sort of, and the way that he has dealt with 33, right? Like that it's like there's clearly some backstory and some history here regarding, I Jack's whole history and whatever, and like to me it's like, yeah, man, battle droids, like it kind of fits perfectly into the idea that he was involved in the Clone Wars, and timeline wise it all makes sense. So uh yeah, I don't know, I'm still very confident in that assertion that he thinks he's a bad guy. This is a very like Han Solo sort of thing of like, no, I'm a scoundrel. No, you're not. You're a hero. I think it's a very, very similar uh, sort of progression for this character, where it's going to turn out that, yeah, you are a scoundrel for sure. You're a scoundrel, but you're a scoundrel with a heart of gold. Just like that other scoundrel with a heart of gold that we all love. Honestly, I think that might be one of the reasons why a certain segment of the audience is actually connecting to the series, because I feel like this is very like Han before the rebellion sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
There's a bit of a through line there for me. So that might be working for other people as well, but I don't know. I again, I'm just like, I'm invested in these characters very
Mhm.
much. Like I want to see where this is going, but there's so much of this larger mystery that I'm very interested in. They've done a very good job of like giving us enough of it but not too much where it's like, yeah, what's going on? Like, can we go the next episode guaranteed? Next episode guaranteed starts on Attin. Like, no doubt in my mind that we will that we're gonna touch base back with that group with the parents, right?
Mm.
And it'll be welcome. We'll be like, oh, cool, okay, what's going on? What's going on Attin? Let's give us some more of this whole thing with the supervisor. Because yeah, I think we're all like, something's going on there. Something else is happening. What is it, right? And we all want to know. So, uh, yeah, yeah. I don't know, I'm really loving this show. Like it. You know what it is? This show of all of them so far feels the most like a modern TV show to me.
Mm.
Um, and I like when I say that, it's like it feels like a TV show, not a streaming show, but like just a, like the stuff that we were getting on TV right before streaming became a thing, right before Stranger Things took off, and all of a sudden now everything's going to be on a streaming platform. Because that was kind of the show that I think marked the beginning of that era. So I'm thinking about shows like Lost, and I don't know, I was a really big fan of Fringe. Um, I loved that show so much, but yeah, like that, and like even stuff like the CW stuff, like Arrow and Flash and all of that, where it's like this is an entertaining episode week to week, right? Like these episodes are great week to week, but then there's like we're driving towards something bigger, as opposed to, I think, Mando, a lot of it feeling like each episode is very much like kind of self-contained. Um, I I often compare Mando back to like the sort of Adam West Batman, right? That Batman 1966 of like, you know, it's campy and it's kind of weird, and each episode might be a little bit different from the one previous, and there's continuity for sure, but it's also like, yeah, this is just an adventure. Like every episode, every week's this different adventure, which feels like a much more like disconnected older thing. But then like Acolyte, Obi-Wan, Andor all feel very like streaming series, right? Like Obi-Wan especially. Obi-Wan is not a TV show or a series. Obi-Wan is just a very long movie, right?
Mm.
There's not an episode of Obi-Wan or Acolyte that I'm like, I just want to watch that episode,
Yeah.
right? Like it doesn't have that feeling to it.
Acolyte was the worst with that, like
Yeah.
ending the episode pacing.
Oh
So
yeah.
much worse than Obi-Wan.
Yeah, where it's like it's very much like, oh, like I need to watch the next one. Yeah. Which is the Stranger Things model, right? Like Stranger Things, that's one of the reasons why that show is so great for binging and as a streaming show, is that like each episode of Stranger Things ends on essentially a cliffhanger that makes you instantly watch the next episode,
Mm.
right? Um and yeah, so this show, it has a little bit of that. Like it has enough of that to where I'm like, oh, what's like, I can't wait for the next one, because it's like, because we shut down 33, and that's sort of the end of the episode. Oh my god, Neil fainting was a big hit in this house. Big hit. When he's like, oh, and then he's just, his eyes closed and his head goes slack, and they're like, what happened? I think he fainted. And then the episode, Kara goes, Kara goes, that's just the end of the episode. They're just gonna end like that. And I was like, yeah, gotta wait for next week. Because I think it's a very new experience for her, for the girls, of like, yeah, we're going week to week, guys. Like, and she's invested. She wants to know what's gonna
Yeah.
happen next. So
Yeah.
it's good. It's fun to be on that journey with her. But um yeah, like this show feels to me like it's actually like as a TV series, very well paced, with like the individual episodes of like, oh, we're gonna do this and this and this, and each episode's kind of got a bit of a 3-act structure, beginning, middle, and end. Whereas like, if I do have a complaint, not even a complaint, this is a criticism for Acolyte, it's that like some of those episodes didn't have, like some of those episodes, it was like you'd be halfway through it and you'd be like, be like, well, this is the end of the episode. Oh no, oh, we have more episode. Oh, there's more story here. Okay, cool. And then other episodes were like, we were just getting going. It's done.
Yeah.
This episode's done. Okay, interesting. But that's actually fairly consistent for Leslie Headland. If you've watched the 2 seasons of Russian Doll, it's like that show as well was like the pacing of the episodes is all over the place. Incredibly well written, great show that I love, but it was very much like kind of just broken up into chunks because that's how it's supposed to be delivered, right? Like that was kind of the feeling.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, but this one, Skeleton Crew feels very nicely paced, very nicely sort of chunked into these episodes. This one especially feeling very self-contained. But if you think about it, it's like the first episode is like at Attin, establishing the world, establishing the kids, introducing the characters and their lives, and then finding the ship, and then the ship takes off into hyperspace. Episode, right? Like nicely paced, nice chunk, really, really great first episode. Second episode, what are we gonna do? Let's go to this pirate spaceport, explore the spaceport, get caught, end of episode, right? Really, really well paced. Perfectly. Third episode, escape from the spaceport, go learn about Attin, run away from the X-Wings, jump into hyperspace, right? Like just really, really well paced individual episodes that you could just kind of like jump into and have fun with. So I'm really appreciating that aspect of it, that it's like I don't feel, I'm excited for next week and I want to know what's next, but I'm also not feeling like we didn't get closure on what happened this week, right?
Yeah.
Like we did like even with the cliffhanger aspect of SM-33, he's got the coordinates, he's trying to kill the children, right? Like all of that, and he's been shut down. But it's very much like, well, no, we dealt with it. Like we dealt with like we came to this planet by accident, but then we were like, okay, let's try and find the coordinates, and we got there and the coordinates have been removed, and we find out that they were removed. The fact that we got the answer to that in the same episode is so refreshing to me, that it's like, okay, that they aren't going to drag that out for 4 episodes until we find out that it was SM-33. Like the fact that it was immediately like, oh, I did that. You're like, wait, what? Like that turn again, watching with the girls, watching with Kara, she was like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, awesome. Like you're so into it. And he's like, yeah, and the other thing that the captain told me, and I like that we haven't named the captain yet. We have, like, that's kind of the bigger mystery there with the captain, is like, who is the captain? Right. Like, yeah, destroy the coordinates, and if anybody else, that he killed everybody who saw the coordinates, if anybody comes looking, rip them limb from limb. But we dealt with it, we shut them off, right? So with SM-33 shut down, now it's a matter of, okay, how are we going to get the coordinates out of this droid without reactivating him, or in a way, like, can we reactivate him in a way that we're safe, that he's like he's let's disconnect the head from the body or whatever, right? Like there's a million ways that they're going to solve this problem, but the immediate threat of SM-33 is going to kill us is dealt with. I and there's closure. We don't, like, I think a different show would have ended on rip you limb from limb, end of episode, right? And then the next episode would have started with the fight and then the shutdown, in order to keep you hooked for next week. But that's not like the pace of the show is satisfying, right? It's not intentionally unsatisfying, which is what those other shows are doing, right? That's what those other things are doing, is going like cliffhanger in order to keep you hooked, like as like a manipulation, right? So yeah, I don't know. That's my take on it. I think I've said everything that I was sort of was noodling around in my head. There's a mystery of like this of King No Head, right? The big statue, and that
Yeah, I that has to be the founder, right? Like
yeah,
the
yeah, it'll be
whatever is
somebody, and it'll
whatever
be
is.
important.
I
But
keep wanting to say the founder, but I don't think that's what his name is.
the supervisor, you mean?
Supervisor,
Is that what
yeah,
you're talking about?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know. I always just the founder is what comes to mind, but
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
agree.
I think so. I think that it'll be connected. Um, Yeah, I mean, I'm very much of the opinion that like at one point there was a supervisor, it was a person, but then
Mm,
like they died and it was replaced with a computer. And that it's just been a droid basically with it with instructions. That cuz that has actually been a through line, right? And the thing is like thematically that ties into the human characters as well, and it ties into Wim's storyline, which is the story that we started the series with, right? Which is like this idea that like droids just do what you tell them, they just follow orders, and that's a problem. That's bad, right? uh SM-33 turning on the kids, and now he's gonna kill them all because it's just his protocol, right? Like that's
mm,
what the captain told him, and she's like, but I'm your captain now, and he ignores it because this order supersedes that order. And so like there's no reasoning with him, there's no rationale, there's no logic to it. And that's what the supervisor is doing to everybody on Attin, is turning them into mindless cogs in a machine, right? And that's what the Empire wanted, and that's what the First Order is going to do, right? Like it's all like this is very connected to larger Star Wars, and Wim's storyline is I won't be a cog in the machine. What do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I want to help people. I want to like when they're in danger. It's all that's what security droids are for. That's what say not security safety droids. That's what safety droids are for, right? And everybody laughs about it, but Wim is like, no, I want, and then Neil, I can't believe you told everybody you want to be a Jedi.
mm.
It's like, that's not what I said. That's pretty much what you said, right? Like all of that stuff. So the supervisor being a computer, being a thoughtless automaton, right? That's just following, like carrying out an order, um, is is very much on point. It also like thematically it makes sense why this is a pirate story, because from an ideological standpoint that's what piracy is about, right? Like when you sort of like hear the stories of um oh man, what was the island that or the town, the port or whatever, that was like that was only for pirates, right? That like they took over. I can't remember what it is right now, but I the idea there was that the colonial aspects of expansion into the Caribbean and the New World and all of that stuff, like like it was like the monarchies were just trying to assert their dominance in a completely new place, and these people were like, but you can't here, like your power doesn't transfer here, right? Like we're going to be free people. And those were like a lot of pirates were fighting for independence basically, without they were doing it by way of piracy, boarding ships, killing people, and stealing things. But like the war, that's warfare. It was warfare, no different than the American Revolution, right? Like it just it was branding, literally. In this instance, it was like pirate flags, right? And it wasn't a bunch of academics sitting in a room going like, what if we drafted a constitution? But instead it was a bunch of thieves going like, well, we have rules amongst ourselves, right? Like we can all be like chill with each other as long as we all agree that we don't have any allegiance to the crown, right? Cool. Okay, we're all good with that. Cool. Okay, but like if we see each other on the open seas, who knows? But at least here in this port, right? Like everybody be cool. Um And so like that idea of like independence and freedom, and free thought, I think is, when you think about the stories that we've been getting in Mando and Book of Boba Fett, and how that connects into the Skywalker saga stuff with the First Order and Finn and all of that. I think that, I think thematically, like, this all kind of wraps in together. It all supports one another, right? And that, like, that's what, because that's what again, that's ultimately what the original trilogy is that, like, the Empire wants everybody to be uniform. They want everything to follow one rule of law and one ideology, and your religion doesn't count in this ideology. And independence is not good, and yeah, like free thought is bad, right? All of that sort of stuff. That's very much what Andor is about as well. So yeah, it I will be very surprised if that's not what this story is ultimately about. And about Attin freeing itself from that subjugation, right? That, like, because I think one of the other through lines with the Mando era is, um, sort of like, it's a twist on the Shakespeare line of, like, a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet, right? And it's like, well, fascism by any other name is just as bad. So the New Republic is also fascistic. That one episode in Mando season 3 with the doctor, with Dr. Pershing. That's what that episode was about, guys. It was about the fact that, like, hey, like the New Republic can be just as fascistic as the Empire was, because what it is about at the end of the day is taking people's freedoms away from them in the interest of security, right? And that the Imperials were being treated just as fascistically as the Imperials treated everybody else. So, like, what did everybody fight and die for, right? Which then ties into the New Republic bureaucracy and Hera's sort of subplot within Ahsoka, of her being like, "What are we doing? Like Thrawn is a threat. If we let him do this, the war is going to start again. He's going to bring back the Empire." And them all going like, you don't have enough evidence." And her being like, "What? Like, it's in front of you." Like, um, and having to fight that fight, and all of that leading into the rise of the First Order, right? Like, that's what that's all going to build to, and the creation of the Resistance within the dynamic of there being a New Republic, and then the New Republic not acting, and the First Order taking over the galaxy, right? So I I if only if only there were other stories in the sequel era to support any of this. um it would be nice. It would be really nice if they would tell some other stories in that era, so that we can actually, like, flesh out those ideas, because the movies certainly missed it. Like they it's there, and it's there from the outset with the Force Awakens, but then it just kind of, yeah, I mean, by the time that we get to Rise of Skywalker, it's completely lost. And so the end of that film is meaningless, completely meaningless, because we never actually see that the First Order has taken over the galaxy. They never actually say that the First Order has won, right? Like, they just, yeah, it's I don't know. I find that very frustrating, because there's so much of the stuff that was the lead up to the Force Awakens. They had so many books. It's funny because at the time, I think we looked at it and we were like, they're not telling us anything about this new era, and we really want to know. And now I look back at it and I go like, oh, guys, you didn't know how good we had it at the time, because once we hit Last Jedi, it was like, there's no tie-ins here anymore. There were like, we're gonna cancel Star Wars Resistance. We're gonna, like, there's like, the comic books aren't gonna deal with any of this, like, nothing, right? Because you think about the lead in to the Force Awakens, and we've got like the Poe Dameron comic is a huge story that sets up so much of what's going on in the galaxy prior to the events of the Force Awakens, right? And the destruction of the New Republic and all of that. And there are multiple stories about Rey on Jakku and what her life was like before that. And there's a handful of things about Finn, and like there's actually quite a bit of stuff that's like we got the story of like how I right, because there's one of the novels. It's like how Han and Chewie lost the Falcon. I Yeah, there's all this stuff to like set up the things that are at play in the Force Awakens, and then after that, it's like no, we're not gonna do anything. But then the whole Mando era has been like we really need to support some of the stuff that we said in those movies, and so yeah, like there's been all of this stuff about the New Republic and like its ineffectiveness and what would push Leia to the degree that she would be like, I'm leaving this New Republic that I helped found in order to create the Resistance, right? Like there's been so much of that, um and supported with characters that we love, like the characters from Star Wars Rebels. And but it's just like, can we get some stuff in the sequel era, the sequel trilogy era? But I don't know, I guess there's a Kylo Ren comic right now that takes place between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
Oh,
um
okay.
Legacy of Vader, I think is what it's called. I think it's
Mm.
Kylo Ren Legacy of Vader, something like that. And maybe that'll fill in some of the stuff that I'm talking about. I but yeah, yeah, it's 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 funny to me how much of the Mando era is connecting into the ideas and the themes of the sequel trilogy, when the ideas and the themes of the sequel trilogy were not explored at all. Right, they were set up and we were told what they were about this rise of the First Order in the midst of the New Republic, and how that all could happen and whatever. And there are books like Star Wars Bloodlines, and like the which is the Leia book, right? I that like explain all of this stuff. And there's we talked about it, I think, last week, of um the Star Wars Rebels tie-in book about the kid who like, and like sort of the establishing of the First Order conscription program and all of that, and how that ties into the Empire, and connects over to the First Order, and all that. But I but then literally none of it is in the second or third movie in that trilogy. Right, like it's just, at that point, for better or worse, it all becomes about Ray and Ben, like, right? Like that's those two movies are so focused on that story, that I think we kind of lose the forest for the trees a little bit. But in terms of like the larger story, because I like that story obviously, but it does pull focus from literally everything else, to the extent that major plot points are explained away with, here's a dagger that points at a thing and somehow Palpatine returned, right? Again,
Uh,
like to the degree that they're like, here's a 600-page book to explain why the dagger exists, right? Like to justify the existence of this dagger and why it works the way that it does in the movie, because obviously it doesn't make any sense with the context of the film itself. And then Mandalorian being like, let's spend multiple seasons of this show about bounty hunters, and about the Mandalorians, explaining Project Necromancer to the general audience, because if you didn't read any of the books, you don't know what that is. And it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just ripped off from Dark Empire, but whatever. Like, for those of us who have read that stuff, who have read the Legends EU, it's like, you guys don't need to explain any of this. Actually, we already know. Like, we have the Thrawn trilogy and we have Dark Empire, and it all explains everything that Project Necromancer is going to be, right? Like, there's all you're doing is filling in gaps. You're just plugging in holes with new canon that is taken from old canon, right? Like, I don't know. Watch the reveal of the supervisor. It's Joris Saboeth, whatever,
Yeah.
however you say his name, right? And that like we've retconned it that he was a High Republic Jedi now, and it's like, and he's just been cloning himself, and and he's absolutely insane, and all that, and that's how they're gonna connect that into Heir to the Empire and the Thrawn stuff. That's where
He's the
gonna come from.
supervisor.
That's what I just said. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. But, but Bad Batch gave us it gave us Tantus, right? Like, so it's like, which is a major component of Heir to the Empire of the Thrawn trilogy. So I guess not Heir to the Empire. I guess Tantus doesn't come in until the final book, until Last Command or whatever. But yeah, I don't know, because I've never read those books because.
No, Tantus is where they find him in the first one.
Okay, so that is in the first one. That is in Heir to the Empire.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I did not enjoy Heir to the Empire, and so I have like purged much of it from memory.
I see.
And didn't read the next two. So, cool. We did it. We talked about Skeleton Crew. I said negative things about Rise of Skywalker, and I made a bunch of wild assertions about where the story is going. So I think that's an episode of Forced Perspectives. I think
it does sound like it.
Yeah,
it does sound like we did it.
Before we're out, did you have a general grievance of the week?
No, honestly, it was just not so much a thing that like my general grievance of the week is usually like a real hang up.
Yeah.
More than anything this week, I was just kind of like bored a lot of the episode. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I watched a Star Wars show and felt like I'm gonna check my email right now in the middle of this episode. So this one did do that for me, and I did pause it to check my email, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, you should watch it with kids.
Yeah, I'm sure it's more fun that way.
Yeah, it was much better with kids. Cool, awesome. Well, I mean, like I'm super amped for the next episode.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more for sure.
Yeah, I want to know where this is going, and I think we might be headed to Navarro. I think that it might be
that would be awesome.
I think that might happen. And whether or not we see Mando, or like which characters we see, it'll definitely, if we do end up on Navarro at some point or connected into that, it'll give us time and place, right? So
the showrunners did make a point to say like, hey, don't expect any cameos in this show though. It's kind of like,
oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's a misdirect or if we really should just follow. I don't believe anything anybody says about shows, because then they turn around and it's obviously like to cover up the big surprises or whatever. But so
yeah,
I don't know. I don't believe anything.
Trust no one. Okay, well, we'll see. There's also like a component there of like, how do you guys define big cameo?
Sure.
Right? Because it's like, well, Mando's not a big cameo,
but he is.
It's like, yeah, he absolutely is. But for them, it's like, well, he's not no, we're talking about like don't expect to see like Luke Skywalker or Ahsoka or something, right? It's like, okay, but like the Mandalorian is the lead of his own show. Like, I think that counts. It's like, oh yeah, I guess. Even Greef, I would consider to be like a big cameo.
Greef would be a huge. I mean, because of everything that happened with Carl Weathers.
Yeah.
For me, a Greef Karga cameo is massive because it's the last one, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a big surprise.
But then I could see them being like, well, yeah, but he's just a supporting character from The Mandalorian, guys. Yeah. Right? And it's like, and after the fact, they'll make a big deal about it, that it was Carl Weathers and it's his final appearance in Star Wars and whatever. Like, I could see them like spinning it that way of like, no, it wasn't that big of a cameo.
Even crazier, it'll be Ray Stevenson.
Yeah. Figure that one out. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. We just have to wait and see. There's no way of knowing. I think actually, like, the stuff that's in the trailers, we've seen most of it. We've seen most of what's in the trailers. I'm sure that somebody out there on YouTube or TikTok has done like a here's what's left from the trailers
Yeah,
sort of thing
Reddit.
halfway through
They
the
always
season.
do that for Mandalorian on Reddit.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it for Skeleton Crew yet, though.
Yeah. So I'm sure that that's out there for people to search out. But at this point, I think we have actually seen the vast majority of what was in the trailers. Honestly, I think the first 2 episodes was the vast majority of what was in the trailers. But yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's just there's just mystery ahead of us. We'll have to tune in to find out what happens next, which is exactly what they want us to do. It's good. It's good Star Wars. It's just good Star Wars. I think that's at the end of the day, whether or not this episode was like a little bit underwhelming in terms of the story, in terms of like what we're being presented with, like from a, like my whole thing of like the mix of like what makes good Star Wars, right? It's like this show's on point. It's on point. It's like these kids are fun and interesting and exciting, and like the story is exciting, and there's danger, and there's also like this sweetness and kindness, and like there's actually the story is actually about something, which I think is the thing that Mando has been missing the most, is that like every once in a while it feels like maybe there's a through line, and then they'll do something and you're like, oh, okay, so that's like running counter to it. Okay, cool. So like it's just been so inconsistent, and then with the sequel films there really isn't a through line in those 3 movies about like what that story is about. So I it's nice to have a story that is very clearly like it's about something, and what that ends up being, like we talked thematically a lot this episode about what that could be. By the end of the series, obviously we'll have a better idea of what it is, right? Well, it'll be more concrete, and that's the way that it should be. By the end of the story, we have a full picture of what the theme is. Sorry if you're hearing those sirens, that's on my end. You're not. There's not. If you're in the car driving right now, I don't know. Maybe there are police behind you, but those
Pull
sirens
over,
were here.
just to be sure.
Yeah. I yeah, it's nice. It's nice that there's stuff for us to talk about that this is actually driving at. That I think is like fairly overt, fairly clear. Which, yeah, Acolyte is very good, but also was a little bit murky in that way, right? It's like, oh, there's a lot going on here. I'm like, this is interesting, and there's a lot to discuss. There was actually more to discuss with Acolyte, I think, in terms of that stuff.
Yeah,
because
I had a lot more to say.
Yeah, because it was more. Acolyte wasn't asserting anything. It was more asking us questions about like what's the nature of good and evil, and the dark side, the light side, and where you fit in with that, and all of that sort of thing. Whereas this one is a little bit more overt of like, yeah, man, blindly following the rules is not a way to live, right? Fascism is bad. So yeah, it's much more clear and overt. But that's what I would expect from a show about pirates. So, cool, awesome. That's it. That's the episode, guys. Thank you for listening. Thanks for hanging out. You're gonna be disappointed again, Joe. I have no sign off for this for this series. But I will just say, to close it out, I called it the second time we heard him say, I can't say I remember any Attin.
Yeah.
I was like, there's more there. He's been programmed to say that. Yeah, I called it. So, just put it on the scoreboard, guys.
You did.
Put it on the scoreboard.
Crystal, not another one for you. I'm sorry.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I hope that you're enjoying Skeleton Crew as much as we are. And I'll just give everybody the heads up. Listen, next week is Christmas. Schedule's going to be a little bit all over the place. We've got a brand new Perfect 10 coming out. It'll come out on Tuesday, which is Christmas Eve. So you guys can unwrap that early as a Christmas present. It'll be available for everybody, not just Patreon. It's gonna go wide to everybody on release because it's Christmas. So like Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. I don't know, what do we say for Kwanzaa? Joyous Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa. I don't know,
Kwanzaa.
man. Enjoy your Kwanzaa.
Like if you observe Festivus, Chrismica, like we do in this house, where we do the blend of the two. whatever you're celebrating this holiday season, I hope that everybody has a great next week and a bit. Our next episode, all of that is to say that our next episode will be a little bit later than this one. So we're recording this one literally the morning after the new episode came out. The next episode comes out on Christmas Eve. So like, we're not recording on Christmas Day. I hate to break it to you guys. And we're not recording up here in Canada. We also have Boxing Day, which is the 26th. So I not recording that day. So it'll be the Friday that we record. And then I'll probably put the episode out that day and everything as well. And it'll go out to everybody, but yeah, so it'll be a little bit of a wait, but the episode it's scheduled, it's planned. But I'm sure that you guys are all going to be busy anyways with holiday stuff. So, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But you will have a new episode of Perfect 10 with Danielle and I talking about the 1991 classic Steven Spielberg film starring Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman, Hook.
Nice.
It's a good episode. It's a fun episode. We kind of there's a lot to talk about with Hook. It's a conundrum of a film to watch in the year 2024 as an adult, but the nostalgia of it as a kid in 1991 is very strong for both of us. So, it's a fun one. Check that out. Make sure that you're subscribed to Perfect 10 and obviously subscribed here to Force Perspective so that you don't miss any episodes. And that's it. I don't know. We were also going to do an off the record before the end of the year, but I actually don't think that we are going to, because I don't know when we would record that now. I'm thinking about. What
episode were we going to do?
I think we were going to do Game of the Year, but I think we'll just save it for when we come back in January.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because this week has already been hectic enough for me. So that's it, guys. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV. And join us on Discord at ThunderQuack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at Patreon.com/ThunderQuack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.ThunderQuack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network.